There we go. Morning, everybody. Welcome to Red Mornings. Carl's here. I'm here. Carl's just having his sandwich, which is awesome. We're gonna get started in just a second here. We're gonna fluff up the crowd. Check out. Thank you guys, by the way, for tuning in. I know it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm assuming at least one of you guys is hungover. Currently making coffee. I even have a red mug. Awesome job,
Yeah, the
Defender.
hungover one is me. I'm hungover as fuck.
I don't know, man. It's weird. Since I started doing the fasting on the regular, I have a hard time drinking now. Like one or two drinks and I'm done. I don't know how you do it anymore.
So that's kind of my thing. I intermittent fast all the time, so I have to make sure, like, when we're doing these,
Yeah.
I have to break my fast a couple of hours early, just because I don't want to sit here drinking on an empty stomach, because I'm working on making the Bloody Mary the official drink of Red Mornings.
Ah, dude, if that's the case, I might do Caesars then, just to put the Canadian twist on it. You've had those before, I'm assuming? It's pretty much a Bloody Mary, but you use Clamato juice instead of tomato. And yeah, I think that might be the only list. I think that's the only difference. Yeah. But anyways, it's like the Canadian hangover drink. That's like what everybody drinks. That was brunch before brunch became shitty soccer mom appies.
No, I have my own kind of twist on the Bloody Mary, but I kind of fucked it up today because I was out of hoisin sauce.
That'd be all right. I had something like that.
It was Worcestershire for hoisin, and then I usually use the habanero Tabasco for a bit of an extra kick.
Oh, Jesus. That reminds me, there was ones in Seattle I used to have. It was right by the university there, and they had wasabi as their spice instead of horseradish. They used black sesame, and I think they had soy instead of hoisin. But being that it's America, they also had about 500 calories worth of cheese blocks on the top of the thing, so whatever.
Well, that's the Americans in a nutshell for you. Is like the French give them the croissants, which is like the most flaky, delicate pastry ever. Yeah. They slap it full of processed cheese and processed ham, and they make a fucking croissant sandwich.
Sacre bleu! Oh,
it's like the fucking American way. It's like just put a bunch of fucking cheese on it.
Well, isn't that like the conspicuous consumption? Make everything bigger, and if this is good and this is good, putting them together is going to make it all good.
Well, don't get me wrong. I love my cheeses, but you know the yellow American processed cheese tastes like shit.
See, we had that here, but I think it's because I was raised on it. I have the nostalgia where I actually kind of like the shittiness taste of it. Same as I like really cheap chocolate. I guess that's the difference between us.
Yeah, but like with cheese, I'm more partial. I love real cheddar, but like the processed stuff, it doesn't even melt right.
No, of course not. Have you ever tried vegan cheese?
No, I almost bought some by accident because I was at the grocery store. And I saw, I've never seen that brand of cheddar before. I should try that one. And I walk and I look closer, and it's like vegan cheese. And fuck no.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't even melt. And not only does it not melt, I think it's like a substitute for cement if you run out. They make it out of cashews or something. It's basically cashew butter, but they call it cheese because vegans need to pretend like they're eating meat without eating meat. It's a very weird thing.
Yeah, but the old lady thinks it's ridiculous. If I'm going to be hiding forever because no one else from the Red Man group is, and yes, I will be hiding forever.
Oh, are they still going off about you being an on?
Oh, some guys do, but
hey, yeah. Hey, man, don't worry about it. He's here the way he's here. You either take it or don't take it, man. So, I'm actually surprised you gave that little...
What?
I'm just surprised you gave that little personal tidbit yesterday. I was not expecting to throw that one out there.
Oh, you mean about the marriage stuff or what else?
Yeah, then you kind of used that to talk about, it was just like a flippant feeling. The feeling of being a father and all that stuff.
Well, I think that's I think guys are in love with the ideal and they're not, like, it's like when you switch to a new job. The first couple of weeks, everyone's like, oh, this is great, it's amazing. And then when you get to about 12 months in, you're like, well, this kind of sucks. So yeah, that's kind of my thing with it, is just that a lot of guys are in love with the idea of being a husband, etc. But once you get into the mundane reality of it, it's completely different.
Yeah, the relationship, guys. It reminds me of how chicks don't want a marriage, they want a wedding.
And, you know, I get some guys jump in. Like I have a couple of friends, and they kind of took to fatherhood really well, and that's kind of what they wanted to do their whole lives, and more power to them. But then you have a lot of guys that kind of just do it to do it, and we're going to be talking about that a bit on the Red Man Groupcast later today.
Yeah, I have a friend who was like that. He didn't do it to do it. He did it because it's her body, her choice. But I don't know, man. I remember having an argument on this one where which is the better father? The kind of helicopter parent that tries to live vicariously through their kids that wants to be a dad like so bad versus the one who's like obliged to do it but doesn't really like to do it, which is my experience of being raised. And I'm kind of leaning towards the latter, but I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, my dad was one of those guys. He just wanted to be a dad his whole life. So for him, that's kind of like what he wanted to do. And I think for guys, it's also something with feeling like you're needed. Because when you're a dad, you're needed. And feeling useful. And I think a lot of guys have problems feeling useful if they're not contributing to something larger than themselves. And a major theme of Upstream as well.
Oh, God, yeah. I've got all those guys on block, so I never really follow what they do anymore. On the rare occasion, somebody will retweet something from Artful there, or Adam, whatever his name was, which is always so obscure that I'm like, this is so detached from reality that you can't possibly, thank you, you can't possibly tell me this has any meaning at all. There we go. Now we're back into it.
Like when you sweep everything up to the kind of like the top level of it and you abstract so far away that there's no practical benefit, it sounds nice, but there's not much else behind it.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. At that point, are you avoiding or are you trying to discover something?
I don't know, but to me, it's kind of like when you get an expensive consultant into a room and he starts talking about brand identity and how we have to communicate our values. Whenever you
dynamically
have one of those guys, when you listen to those guys, it's more or less one of those Tony Robbins shows. And I hate to kind of piss on him all the time, but it's so detached from practical reality. And I think it's just simply a consequence of the fact that a lot of larger corporations, and they don't have to be that large, but let's say a couple hundred employees, you get a very detachment between operations and the administrative level on it and the executive level. So the executive level sitting down and talking about, okay, how do we improve our production output through tailoring our processes? That's never going to work because they have no clue. You actually need someone who knows what the processes are, how to structure them, etc. But when you start talking about branding, everyone can have an opinion. It's the same thing with morality and metaphysics. Everyone is qualified to have an opinion on them because there is no quantitative metric to them or no really solidness.
Well, there is a solidness, but it's the time scales are so long that by the time we find out if it's good or not, like this diversity is our strength morality meme, by the time we find out whether it's a long-term good or bad choice, all of us are going to be dead. So you kind of had me thinking of that one day when you were talking about, what the hell was that one? You gave out a tweet early on that subject where, the nation state, the idea of all of a sudden this extra immigration is a bad thing and globalism when we've only had the alternative for like a generation or two maybe. So it's really hard to say that this is how the things always were.
Well, it's very difficult when you start to look at things historically, because historically everyone was protecting their borders. Like the whole thing was protect the borders because the land was kind of what kept everyone alive. So, and now we have this state where everyone is so detached to the point where people don't even know where their food's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of an issue when, kids are growing up and they think that, well, steaks, they're not related to cows. They're these things we get in vacuum sealed packages at the grocery store.
Which is funny because the Chinese get around it by always having like the heads attached on their food when they bring it out. Well, for some dishes anyway. Like I know that one fish dish they have where the fish is like the head staring at you.
The way I think it's related to the diversity thing, it's a buzzword, because what do you mean by diversity? Because you can have a lot of different types of diversity. I mean, I like diversity of thought.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, I don't really care about diversity of skin color or sexuality or sexual preference. It's kind of one of the weirdest things I've seen lately is that people are actually starting to, put in their Tinder profile, like, here are my exact sexual preferences.
Yeah, whatever happened to the good old days where you can just put a handkerchief in your back pocket and the other guy would know that you prefer anal?
Yeah,
No tact, no tact at all.
Kind of curious at how you know that, but
I know all kinds of things. I've been in the Navy for 12 years. If you don't see a few dicks in your time, you haven't been doing it right.
No,
Where are you gonna go with that one?
No, where I was going with the whole thing with the sexual preference thing is, I'm just waiting. Are we going to get to a point where, like, okay, we really need guys who are into bondage in the finance department of this company? It's all submissive chicks. There's no diversity.
Oh, that whole thing, it reminds me of what's that saying go? Where if you make a bad metric, you get a bad outcome. Like, I think the diversity thing is a bad metric, and it's turned into some kind of weird jockeying for status to be able to say you're more pro-diversity than somebody else.
Well, I do get the whole type of diversity that it can be a benefit to some extent, because let's say you have all dudes in your company.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to naturally think about products for women, perhaps, in the same way that women would.
Yeah,
because
that's true.
Talking about, what is it, the whole problem, solution, outcome, or whatever, the old thing with coming up with a product. And, I had no idea, for instance, about, how annoying some girls find bra clasps. I know I find them annoying as fuck, especially when I'm drunk. But, and it's the kind of thing, you don't know if something is a problem for women in certain degrees until you start hanging out with a lot of women.
Of course, do you need a woman in an engineering role to figure that out, or do you just need a guy who gets a lot of women for his research?
That can work too, but I can buy the fact that having people with different life experiences to some extent can have a positive benefit in certain departments. Like, let's say, product development. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need 50-50 men, women on your corporate board or in your executive suite or in the factory, for that matter. It just means that you need them in the certain locations where they do a great job.
Yeah, and in that, I mean, let's face it, what we're talking about really is India and China, the two big emerging markets that everybody wants a piece of. So you really kind of want, when you want diversity of opinion from a marketing standpoint, you really want to get a guy from India and a guy from China, and a chick, I guess, to learn about bra clasps.
But that's why a lot of the companies I've worked with have started, actually, they don't hire local consultants for overseas market anymore. They just hire someone in that country to handle that specific market.
That's a good take.
And especially for places like China, like if you're going, let's say you're doing business in Switzerland and you're going into Germany,
right?
Your Swiss staff can handle Germany just fine. But once you go from, let's say, Europe to China or America to China, the whole infrastructure and the way of doing things is just different. And it's also, they have their own platforms, they have their own structures. So you're not going to do well if you're focusing on Google or using Google metrics, because they're 4 years behind in that specific area. And, they have Red Flag OS over there, which is mostly Linux-based.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a whole different, it's much better to just get local people for China. Same thing to a degree with Russia.
It's all about the logistics.
We're talking about Africa, but no one there has any money, so they're not buying anything. So there's no one doing market research in Africa.
Yeah, it's all about the logistics. I guess we should actually touch on the topics we had set up for this thing.
Yeah,
I was thinking that one, you kind of brought up a good point on the sexual logistics, though. I had a client who was going on a date, and I think I talked to you briefly about that. He was actually going to take her to one of those themed restaurants, and that was his logistical thing. It was like the worst idea ever.
Well, the thing we can go into logistics, but it's one of those, it's one of those things that goes without saying. It's kind of like, no one really talks a lot about it, because it's kind of, everyone knows it, but no one really thinks about how much of a difference your logistics can make. Like, when I moved now recently, I live in an apartment very near to the town center of the city I'm living in. And I have, it's maximum 10-15 minutes to get to the bars and clubs and everything.
Nice.
And that just makes it so much easier to bring a girl home.
Well, yeah, when you're doing your time dilation or bridging.
Yeah, but I do that down in the town. So, you meet her in one public place, you take her to one place, you take her to a second place, and then you take her home. But I'm kind of dialing off taking girls home. Like I have 2 dates set up for later. Don't get me started. That was a logistics fuck up on my end. Because I had a date set up with one girl, but she was like, I have to check if I have to work because I can get called in at short notice. So I'll let you know on Friday if we're on for Saturday. And so I sent her a message and asked her if we're still on. She didn't reply back, so I set something up with the second girl. And then the first girl came back into the picture. So at that point, I just had to run with it.
Are you actually going to run with it, or are you going to flake on the one?
No, I'm thinking about hitting both of them up, but I'm not going to. I'm trying to build plates more than I'm doing one-night stands right now, so I'm trying to. Like the one I'm meeting first, I'm not going to sleep with her. The second one, I don't know what I'll do with that one. It depends. So I'll see where it goes with that one. But I'm trying to do like a 1 to 2 hour date, and then try and bridge that into a second date later during the week or something.
Oh man, Carl, you know what's perfect about your story? It's that this is exactly what girls do. And then this is why they're flaking on dudes, because they don't set up logistics in that. They just pick one. And I thought that's like, I wish I had that. I just did a video on bridging and time dilation on how you can use that to keep pressure off of chicks. And that's the part that's helping them get flaked on by girls who don't like pressure. Like, for example, taking a girl out to dinner. And dude, that story would have been an awesome addition into that one.
Well, the way I also figure it is, if I set up all my first dates and usually second dates on the same ground rules, like it's usually we either start with coffee or a drink, and then it's just drinks.
Yeah.
For the first couple of dates, then like with the one plate I've been going with, I've been having off and on for a few months now. Because I was traveling here a lot before I moved here, so I was able to set up some logistics. With her, it's more about. We've been seeing each other for so long that I have no problems feeding her if she's here.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole don't feed a girl rule, I mean, a lot of guys take these game rules and they think they're fucking laws, and they're not. They're more guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you've been seeing a girl when she's staying over at your place and she sleeps over and she wakes up and asks you, can I have some cornflakes the next morning? You're not going to tell her, fuck no, bitch, I'm not feeding you.
I've done that. Except for a little nicer. Do you want me to call you a cab, or should I give you a ride? Are you kicking me out? I'm like, well, not right away. I mean, take some time, wake up, have a coffee. But that girl got off on me treating her like crap, so that's not the norm.
No, but it's just about you don't want to jump girl. Like if you take a girl to dinner on the first date, you're making it very serious very quick.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. It was the pressure of the thing, because girls hate pressure. They're risk averse. They just get anxiety for whatever reasons, because back in caveman days, whatever. And yeah, when you do dinner, that's saying that you're going to be the focus of the night, and girls will sabotage pressure rather than like try and plow through it. That's why I love yours, where it's, how did yours go? Public place, 15-minute first date to get to a coffee place, second date, half an hour, then walk to a alcohol place. That's the third date. Then the pub is the fourth date. And then back to your place is like fifth date. So it sets up all these little non-pressure situations to build a comfort.
It's the good thing I like about that little walk from the public place to the pub is it's a good time to, run some quote unquote day game on her. Mm-hmm. You run some day game type material. Usually I'll ask them something like the weirdest date she's ever been on or something like that, just to take the pressure off.
Yeah. And
I have like 4 bridging stories that I can do depending on the girl. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to about logistics, because game in and of itself, it comes down to you dial down your material as you go along. You know which openers work better for you. You know which stories to tell. You have a rough plan in your head of how the date's going to go.
Yeah.
So by doing that, you're kind of taking the pressure off yourself, and you can focus on the date instead of, what do I say next, or what are we going to do next? Is she having fun? And, I don't really care if they're having fun. And that's kind of the...
just assume they are. Like, I know this is fun. It was fun for the last 50.
Something like that. And it's... And I think that's just the kind of the hill the guys have to climb in the beginning of finding which stories work for them, finding which type of logistics works for them. Like for me, bars work really well because I can always tell stories or do little anecdotes about drinks or something like that. So it's kind of a DHB. I mean, like if you're a big foodie type guy, take them to one of those outdoor places where they have a ton of street food or they have a lot of the locally sourced. Not a farmer's market per se. You don't want to take a girl to a farmer's market on a first date because that's very much a couple's thing.
Yeah.
But somewhere where you have some knowledge about, like if you're into art, take her to an art gallery. Buy a coffee on
museums
the
all
art
the time.
gallery. Buy a coffee on the way and go to the gallery. You can walk around there for half an hour and talk about the paintings or the sculptures or whatever while you're drinking your coffee. After you're finished at the museum, you say something like, "Hey, this was fun. I'm getting thirsty. Let's grab a drink over at that place." And you just make sure it's a museum that has a decent bar somewhere near it.
Oh, you know what was awesome for night game? Doing that walk after the pub, after the bar to usually you'd go to get some like after food place, whatever, like Pita Pit or whatever I loved doing the thing where you pull somebody quickly to an alleyway and sneak a quick kiss and then continue on as if nothing happened. I don't know why, but that one was always like an awesome little bridging thing. I just loved it. I don't know. It has no context here at all. I just had to brag about it.
Well, it sounds like a good move, but the way I see logistics is when they try to track down serial killers, they usually do like a grid map and they plot in all the dude's victims. And then they start to notice, okay, what place is in the center of all these victims? And then they usually have an idea what the area where the guy lives. And usually there won't be any kills near his house. So it's a zone where he's comfortable, but where it's far enough away from his house that it's unlikely that he'll run into a neighbor while he's kidnapping a chick or something.
And what a wonderful analogy to make.
One sec, my alarm for doing this show just popped on.
Oh, that's good. No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, that was the one thing that was bugging me too. When you hear guys like Mary Red Pill, we had a bunch of divorced guys that were starting to do dates again, and they would go on a date and they would bring back a story about how it didn't work so well. And then you start hearing like the lack of logistic planning. Like you say, it goes without saying, but I really don't think it does. Especially from a place that had to like teach guys to look for girls showing interest in them before they assumed interest, IOIs and whatever. But they would go on a date, but they wouldn't have a place to bring her back to. So like right there, you set the date up for failure. Then you bring her to a place that's too much pressure. It's 1v1. When in reality, like you always tell the guys like, hey, if you're into something, take her along with you on your adventure. So that way there's no pressure. It's not on her. And then guys kind of come to that realization that they don't really have anything about themselves that worthy or interesting. And then you realize like their logistics are so bad because they have no foundation work. So you get them like join an improv class, make some friends, do Tai Chi in the park, like something where you have something that you can do that other people can come to.
Well, I think the same thing. It's part of, build yourself a decent life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of guys, they're sitting at home, they're playing Xbox in their apartment with just a TV, an Xbox, and a comfy chair.
With the TV box as the coffee table.
Yeah, something like that. And they just sit there playing PlayStation all day, and then they're like, I'm going on a date. What do I talk about? Well, what do I do all day? Well, I go to work, I play Xbox, I jerk off, and I sleep. And, none of those are great topics to have a take on. I do have a masturbation story that I do use on dates occasionally.
Is it for shock value, or is there actually like a funny?
It's kind of the because the way I structure my dates, I start them off. I always keep it lighthearted.
Yeah.
But I'm a funny guy, so I play off humor all the time. So it's just playing to my strengths. And this story is about there was a guy, and his parents didn't have any locks on any doors in their house. And mom kept barging in without knocking all the time. And the guy was, in his teens, and he was sitting there masturbating. And he couldn't really enjoy jerking off because, he was deathly scared that mommy was going to burst in the door at any time without knocking.
Yeah.
So one day when he was home and mom was home, he sat down on his in front of the computer, got completely naked, whipped his dick out, and just sat there with his dick in his hand for the whole day until his mom just barged in without knocking. And she was like, holy shit, and she backed out again. And like you said, sometimes you have to lose a battle to win a war.
Fuck, I should have done that. I should have told the story about how I had to catch somebody when I was doing rounds on the ship who was jerking off in C4 stores where we have all our IT equipment. With his like 16-inch laptop, which is illegal, by the way, having like a personal laptop in a classified space, but whatever. Actually, maybe I probably shouldn't tell that story. I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to. Yeah, I like that one though. Win the battle, win the war.
But the whole point with the story, it's just a funny story. And same thing with, it works a lot when you're trying to escalate the content of the night because you need a couple of innocuous ways to sexualize the interaction.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. If you don't make it sexual, you're just a bestie.
And you can do some things with Kino, but you can't just do Kino. You have to turn the conversation towards sex at some point, and that's one of the things that I was thinking about earlier. Was a lot of guys are like, well, game is lying, and it doesn't have to be. And
Nope.
Guys who run game, I think, actually lie less than a lot of
the same thing. It's more honest, yeah.
Liberal guys, because they hide their dick and pretend not to be interested in the girl for 17 dates. And they're not being honest or genuine at all. At least I'm honest when I try to take him home and bang him on the first date.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. It's one of the things that bothers me the most when you hear the Tradcon-y, Stedman-y types there talk about that. It's like, you want to have sex with her, don't you? And they always kind of hum and haw. Like, they can't even be honest with themselves about it. They have to treat it like it's some shameful thing to want to sleep with a girl. And that you don't care about her until you've slept with her. Or she gives you a reason to care. I think that's the big thing. You're putting the onus on somebody else. Like, where's the value in your interaction? Like, and then that kind of switches the frame from the date being you interviewing for the job as pussy inspector to the interview or the date is actually her qualifying herself to you, which I think is a huge switcher. Like, once people figure that out, I think that really changes the date dynamic.
Yeah. No, I was going to get back to the whole serial killer analogy for a moment here, because I was just thinking of, what I think guys need to do, and what I was getting into with that is sit down and draw up a map of, an area that has the following covered. Transportation. You need to be able to get around easily when you've been drinking, so no driving.
Right.
So you need somewhere with decent public transport. You need a place that has at least, I would say, 10 to 15 bars, ideally. You need 3 to 4 public meetup location. That's just if you want to do double scheduling.
Oh, okay.
Make sure that they're far enough apart that she won't accidentally walk into you when you're on your second fucking date. And that's the same thing with having 10 to 15 different bars that you can visit on rotations that are popular. You don't want the guy to be, oh, hey, good to see you again, Carl. Who's this girl? She's not the same one you were in with here yesterday. And what happened to the girl you were in here 2 hours ago?
That's bad customer service on the staff, man.
Yeah, you don't want to get into that. And you also don't want any of the waitresses, because some of them will actually think it's funny. Like, there was a night portier at a hotel I was staying in. I was staying there for like 2 weeks on the job. And I brought a different girl back to the hotel like 4 nights in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And the girl behind the working nights, behind the desk, she just thought it was funny as fuck. Like, every night she'd see the same thing. Me going up with a girl, grabbing 2 beers in the bar, taking them up to the room, and then like 3 hours later, me walking them back out at 2 o'clock in the morning.
See, I don't know if it's a disagreement or not, but for me, I liked having the social proof that came with knowing the staff. And then for bars, I was right. I like how you said the 15 bars in a close proximity. What I liked is where there was, I call it like the World War I. I don't know if you know this, but the Red Baron, the way he used to get so many kills back then was there'd always be like a swarm of planes doing a little whirlwind fighting each other. He would always sit outside of it. And then when a plane fell out of formation, he would dive on them and take them. I like the bar that's about a block or like around the corner from all the main bars. And I find usually that one's the theme bar, like a goth bar or a country bar. And that's the one where girls go to isolate themselves from their friend circles. And I found that was the best. Like, I had a goth bar I used to go to. It was maybe a block and a half away from all the bars in town. And all you had to do was walk in there, and the one girl who wasn't wearing black, you knew for a fact she was there to hide from her friends, and it just set me up for success right there.
That's a clever one.
Yeah. Oh, and it was beauty too, because I obviously didn't look like a goth either. I'm sitting there, and I think this was like 2008, like Keys to the VIP and Mystery was all the biggest thing ever. So I had peacocking shit to the nine. So I definitely did not look like a Danzig fan.
Yeah, that's an interesting turn of events, but I'm going to look into that one, testing that out. But anyway, and you need a couple of good places for like the late night snack type thing if you get hungry on your way home.
Mm-hmm.
But you want, just to put it out there, you don't want it to be like a huge heavy meal. And you don't want it to be too greasy, because a lot of girls don't want to have sex if they're feeling, bloated and they've just eaten a huge pizza.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, when you were in the States, you weren't on the West Coast then. Oh, I guess because the West Coast, they usually like having those healthier options. Like, I always went to Pita Pit because that was the nice light thing, just a pita and some bread. Yeah, but I can see the East Coast New Yorkers with that pizza probably not having as good a go with it.
Well, pizza or like gyros when they're stuffed full of all kinds of dressing and stuff, also not a good option.
There you go. This goes back to
logistics. Like Asian places, if they have them, are usually very good because they're usually quite vegetable heavy, and if you avoid the fried stuff, it's usually good while not being like heavy and greasy and everything. And having greasy, bloaty sex is no good for anyone.
Fair enough. Although I guess there's also just skipping food altogether and just using liquid calories. But I think because you and I were talking before, we both had I had a mini bar back in the day, and I think you still have yours. But making your little home bar I find that one to be awesome too. A lot of times, as long as girls are drinking, they don't really care about eating so much.
Yeah, and I also make sure, the only thing I don't have in my home bar is vodka, funnily enough.
I'm assuming it's because you keep running out?
No, it's because I hate fucking vodka.
What? Oh man. What is wrong with you? That's like having your basic bitch fridge stocked and not having any rosé in there. Shame on you, Carl. Shame on you.
Well, I can make all the drinks you usually use vodka for with other liquors that are better.
Well, let's do it easy then. Just like a plain straight up martini or a Gibson. What would you use? I guess gin. Never mind. So basically, gin is what you're saying you use instead of vodka.
Well, you can use gin, and you can also use what's it called? Cointreau. It's like French orange type stuff.
Yeah, I know the one.
Screwdrivers. And
actually,
you can use.
Yeah, I can't be too hard on you. I do remember I loved gin, but that was only because when I first came of age to go to the bar, black lights in the bar was all the biggest thing. Before they realized that kids don't know how to do laundry, and everybody walked in looking like snowmen. Gin always shined under the light, and that always looked really cool.
Oh, gin. I love gin. So I think that's probably my favorite after whiskey. But you can also use, and I think it's kind of a cool thing too, because if the girl is always used to drinking vodka, you can also use, like, if you get like a regular white whiskey, like corn liquor with just no flavoring to it at all, almost, that works for vodka, because vodka is just basically alcohol and water.
Yeah, well, that's what the mash is too, isn't it? Like, if they do corn alcohol without a filter, or after they filter it, that's basically vodka, isn't it?
Yeah, same fucking thing.
Yeah, fair enough. Wonder if we have that here. I got to make a check for that.
Well, I know is it Old Smoky or something? They do a white one, and I think Jack Daniels might do a white whiskey now too.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
I grew up on cheap vodka, so I can't stand. There's like a flavor to it, and it's kind of weird because vodka is supposed to be flavorless.
Dude, I've said that. Yeah, cheap vodka tastes like vodka. Good vodka tastes like water.
Yeah, something like that. And I just don't. If I'm buying vodka, I'm not going to buy top shelf vodka. Why would you buy top shelf vodka?
I always stick with the Poles. The Polish make great vodka, like Vabarova. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's been my go-to. It's the nice, normal, mid-shelf $20 bottles. And the only difference between that and Grey Goose is just the marketing and the label.
Yeah, so why bother with something expensive? But anyway, so for logistics, just have something to drink back at your place. Have a basic red, a basic white, some form of beer, usually good to have in your fridge.
Yeah, half a bottle of champagne from your dad's funeral.
Oh, no, that Goldman thing, that's just a brilliant. I actually used that, because I usually don't finish a full bottle of wine in a night myself.
Yeah.
Because I'll have, especially if I'm drinking red, I'll have I get too drowsy if I drink a full bottle of red. Lacking those French genes.
Yeah. Same. I get headaches, massive headaches from the tannins.
So I just save like half the bottle, and then the next date I go on, if I want to bring the girl home, I'm like, well, I have half a bottle of good red wine at home. Let's go finish that.
Yeah, I wish. And the thing is, Chuck, my dad died. I could actually use that line if I ever got, single again.
I don't think I would use the death thing.
I don't know, the reason I love it is because it's got that hook to it. Like automatically, they want to know, like, why are you drinking at a funeral? Who was it that's close to you, and what's the story attached to it? Because you actually seem so casual about it, it's kind of missing the consistency. So it really is that's why I think it's brilliant. Like, I'm surprised Goldman doesn't do writing more.
You mean writing stories, or?
Yeah, like he's obviously good at telling. I mean, he's been doing day game long enough with his camera and that.
But we have one more topic, I think, for today. We want to do married guy and single guy.
Oh, yeah. What was the title of that? Let me go back and read it. Married guy and single guys who make excuses. Oh. Yeah, the excuse guys. Oh, these drive me nuts. And I cannot tell when guys are making excuses if they know they're making an excuse or if they truly believe it.
No, like the married the married guys are like, well, my wife actually did have a headache.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so many.
She's been having 15 years.
Yeah, 15-year headache. But no, the one I hear the most is when you talk about catch and release, where a guy needs to be attractive again. His wife hasn't had sex with him in forever. And the mental model you give them is that your wife doesn't get full control over your libido. She just gets first crack at it. The idea being, if your wife's not having sex with you, she doesn't find you attractive, go get a second opinion. And then guys are terrified because that means as soon as you talk to another girl, it's cheating. Like, no. Like, you haven't been single in a while, but let me break down to you. Between screwing up logistics, last-minute resistance, anti-slut defense, like, girls throw plenty of reasons for you not to have sex with them. And you have about a good 5 or 6 of them that you can just, as soon as you take one, you can easily stop. You're not going to accidentally fall and slip a dick into a girl. So you can tell it's just a guy making an excuse.
Well, it's the same thing with the girls who don't want to lift weights. They're like, well, I don't want to lift weights. I'll get too bulky. It's like just looking at a deadlift will make them look like Hulk fucking Hogan,
Oh, I know. Yeah. And then you could obviously go into the whole 15 times the testosterone levels. You're going to have to eat like a horse. Nobody accidentally gets a PhD when they touch a school. But then you realize, like, it's something underlying, and I wish I could understand it more. But the only real technique I've seen to get somebody out of it is shame. If you want to shame them into being a pussy, and I normally hate doing that, but in that case, it's kind of for their own good.
I don't, like I said, I don't get it. But the guy thinks he thinks he's so hot in his own mind that when he goes out just talking to a girl and she's just going to knock him down and sit on his dick.
Mm-hmm. I wish it was that easy. If it was that easy, incels wouldn't exist. Nobody be renting white vans.
Yeah, no one will be driving through Toronto casual on a Sunday, mowing down the guys at the farmers markets.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, how recent do we want to get with these things? At what point are we going to hit that open wound? I was like, I think we can stop at the Toronto van guy. Any closer, I'm worried about getting full on Wall Street journaled.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say about that is I don't think I would have done it in Toronto because, well, it's better doing it in Toronto because then you just have to clean the blood out of the car. Imagine all the sweat and nicotine if you did it in Montreal.
Dude, I don't think he could have done it in Montreal. The roads there are so bad and everybody's such an asshole. Like, people would have been ready for it. Like, I don't know. This is how bad it is in Montreal for driving. My wife had blown one of our tires out on our car driving on the highway because she ran over a chunk of rebar that was coming out from the street. And when she first got there, before she got a job, she used to work at a bar, which was awesome. And she was catching a cab home and calling me. And then halfway through the phone call, like 3 a.m. She's like, yeah, I'm spinning donuts on the highway here. I think I might die. So she's over top of the bridge. The guardrails are already kind of half beat, spinning donuts, doing 90 down the highway. And I was just like, the hell? Yeah, it's horrible there. They've definitely kept the European style of like, fuck you, I'm driving. Except for they don't have those F1 driver license skills.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're driving if you go to Paris, every single fucking car there is dented. Because they drive like normally you have the right of way and you have all kinds of laws to kind of navigate traffic, and the French don't give a shit about any of them.
Yeah, I've heard the Italians are bad for that too.
Well, in Italy, it's just the case that the traffic laws in Italy are not laws; they're suggestions.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, that's one thing. I wouldn't mind going to Paris to check this out firsthand.
Yeah, like Italians, they will see a stop sign, and there's about a 50% chance that someone will stop.
Kind of makes you wonder what's the point. Oh, well, whatever. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah, excuses. So I was curious, like single guys. You had that single guy you were talking about that from your old work that you're kind of helping him get out of his little dry spell. And I bet for a fact he had a ton of excuses.
Yeah, he did get out of his dry spell eventually. A girl just had to basically approach him, grab his dick, and masturbate him in the middle of a dance floor. And then he finally figured out, oh, she's into me. So I can actually maybe bust a move here.
That's all he needed was a bipolar chick who found her mark, and then he's in there.
Yeah, all he needed was just a girl who did all the work for him. So, but I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of guys. They don't realize the work that goes into it. And I think it was me and Donovan on his show where we talked about being, a player is a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And guys don't realize how much fucking work that goes into this with all the planning, all the logistics, the layouts, the workouts, the dieting, the having to keep fucking clothes cleaned and ready and everything. I mean, having to wash my sheets 6 fucking times a week so they don't stink like a fucking whorehouse.
Did you try that, by the way, the borax?
No, I haven't tried it yet, but I haven't had a girl over, so the sheets, well, the last girl I had over didn't have much perfume, but I do have to wash my my pillowcase because I think I left about half her makeup on it.
She had the makeup gun set to whore?
Yes.
I love that reference. Dude, I was the stupidest night gamer when it came to that kind of logistics, because I had like a huge fetish for bright white 600 thread count sheets. Super expensive. I loved them because I hated the sheets on the ship. They were literally like prison sheets. So I came home, I'm like, I want something good. Not thinking that when I start going out to the bar to pick up, that I'm going to have like facial recognition software on my pillow every night. I've lost like probably $1,000 worth of sheets at the time. And if I was lucky, it was makeup that was the fluid stuck on them, because I've had way worse.
Well, in my case, I usually run with black sheets.
That would have been smart, yeah.
Well, usually blacks and grays, just for the case that it doesn't look that fucked up with all the makeup. But then again, red lipstick on sheets, not a good thing. And there are a lot of other bodily fluids you can ending up on those sheets, and Jesus, puke on white sheets, especially if you've been having red wine.
Oh, I was thinking worse than puke, but I can see puke being bad. Yeah, although usually if it's puke, it's mine. So.
But usually I'm assuming that, if the girl's out of the bar, she's not on her period. That's number one. So there's not going to be any period blood. And number two, if you're doing anal on the first, when you bring our girl home from the bar, they're bigger freaks than I've ever met. Like
that was the thing. I've had that a few times, and all those times, granted, the girl could have been lying. It was more so that her boyfriend was too timid, and so she really wanted to try it out. Like, I've never been into it, but I've never been one to say no to like sexual requests either. So that's been my experience with it.
Well, it just the whole thing with it is I've heard some anal horror stories, and I'm not sure if I want to do them on this podcast because we don't want to lose our monetization.
That's right. They're still doing the check to make sure that I haven't done anything too stupid.
Yeah, and I figure Carl and Rian going through the worst anal horror stories is probably not very advertiser friendly.
I really want to, though. Oh, geez.
Yeah, what was
Yeah.
a friend of mine made a joke like a while back, and every time I think of it, I started laughing to myself, and it was best way to get a girl into having sex. You just when you're doing her from behind, grab her hair, bend her off so you're right close to her ear, and whisper, "Bite the pillow and going in dry."
It doesn't matter what you say as long as you say it with confidence. The Dane Cook style of game. Actually, yeah, back to that first topic. That was why I loved you were talking about museum and art galleries. That's why I loved it because like I'm pretty decent with it. I'm not 100% pedantic where I start getting a little angry at the nuances, but I know enough about art from my art history degree that I could talk about it. And the thing I found that was great is that girls don't give a shit about art, but they like a good storyteller. So it didn't matter what I say, as long as I said it with some enthusiasm, try to make it sexual. And with like Renaissance art, it's really easy to make things sexual, especially when they start painting the Greek stuff. Zeus was awesome for game.
Yeah,
And then it
that would
kind of,
make it a very good transition too, because you're naturally sexualizing when you start to see pictures with sex in them.
yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
That's why I used to have in my old place. I used to have like a huge print of what's it called, the Garden of Earthly Delights by what's his name again? I'm gonna
Why
look
do I
that
remember
up.
that one? That's not the, oh, no, I'm thinking the School of Athens. Or is that the one where it's like got the fresco where it's got the three pictures, like
Hieronymus
heaven,
Bosch.
hell, and purgatory?
It's a, like heaven, hell, well, Garden of Eden, Earth, and then hell or something. So it's Hieronymus Bosch painting, and that's a bunch of
Oh, look at you with the
people.
northern art.
Well, actually, I'm kind of I'm really bad with art because it's not like an area I've spent a ton of time on.
Mm-hmm.
I probably should spend more time on it, to be honest. I just haven't had the time to look into it that much. But I really like paintings that I got a real thing for abstract art in particular.
Like, are we talking
So
Jackson Pollock kind of stuff? Or are we talking more like surrealism or Dada or?
more or less all of it. Like like I really like Van Hock's paintings, especially Star Night is one of my favorites. I just love the way he sees color.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Monets that are not quite abstract. Then you have your Jackson Pollocks, which are fairly modern. That I really enjoy them. I just find it hard to have them on the wall because they're not really conversation starters.
Oh, you don't even know. That's the part I love about art is that it's visual philosophy. And so you can kind of really get into it where you would talk how the Renaissance, it was more like tradecraft where you had to paint. It's like photography for wedding photos and that. And then once photography got invented, artists had like an existential crisis where they had to figure, well, what's art now if photography can do it all for us? And so they kind of play with different aspects of it. And Pollock's big one, well, it's just the action of taking your brush and putting it on a painting. That's what art is. That's the difference. And so that's why they're called action paintings. So it's basically him stylizing the process of putting your brush onto the painting. And but you see where I go from there. Like we can actually talk about this stuff and have a conversation around it. And I've had people, my buddies did this. I took them to the Vancouver one when we had a port visit down there. I had 4 hours of them calling me gay for talking about art. Fucking drove me nuts. They just wanted the bar to open. But then they go home to their wives and they talk about how cultured they are, unlike the other filthy sailors. I was like, you motherfucker. The only thing that would have made it worse is if they started making fun of my shirts.
Well, I can't really make fun of a Gray Henley.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of which, I noticed on the last one, I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to make a clip. I think it's going to be called 4 Minutes of Carl Ripping on Ryan's Shirts. I think it's going to be the most hilarious thing ever. It actually is pretty good once you get rolling.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Jesus, how many Red Man groups have we done now? Like 40 together?
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say a majority of them. There's 56 now, and we've been on the majority of them, so at least 40.
Yeah, so there's probably at least like 40, 45 shirt jokes in there.
That's the problem. I got to get some more shirts. Now that spring's coming, I'm gonna bring my Magnum PI out, so I'll give you some new material to work with. I love that thing.
That's a good tip. And but I also like Salvador Dali. I like some of the surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
But
Oh
I
yeah,
think,
Dolly is an awesome one.
and it's just a great way of getting girls to kind of lighten up because they think they're seeing a new side of you, a more cultured side.
Yeah.
And it's also a great segue because if you hang some kind of art in your bedroom, you can actually talk about that after they've seen everything in your living room. Well, I have this thing in my bedroom too, and then you can naturally take them in there and you can talk about it. You take them back out. That way they've been in there already, so it's not a big deal when you take them back in.
Ooh, I need to stop and feed my fish routine. I like that.
But then again, I'm a bigger fan of having sex with girls on the couch over the bed.
Why is that? Just because you want beds for sleeping?
No, just because there are no sheets on the couch, and it's much easier to clean the couch than it is to clean the bed sheets.
Oh, you got a leather couch, don't you?
Yeah, of course I do. Much easier to clean.
Dude, single guys always do. I miss mine. I had a 12-foot leather sectional, white leather sectional. That was I loved that couch. That couch got me so much.
I'm not sure if I would have gone with white.
Leather's just leather. It was easy to clean. The only time it's ever been stained was a Halloween party where somebody had one of those stupid gel hands that you'd throw and it'd stick to walls and that. Somebody left it on the couch and then it stained it red for a bit, but it went away after a couple months.
Yeah, well, like I said, I just like to keep everything low maintenance in the house as part of the logistics routine. You want to keep everything down to the minimum you need to be comfortable. You don't want, this sad MGTOW apartments look.
Yeah, I can see that.
Catch that one. There was some girls, I think, or some purple pill debate thing that did like a whole thread called "Sad MGTOW Apartments," and they were just going through guys who were putting MGTOW videos on YouTube, and you can see, it's obviously in a basement somewhere.
Yeah.
Not completely finished. Kind of exposed piping, exposed wiring, etc.
And the only nice thing in there is one sitting chair and the whatever TV he had in front of him. Yeah, those ones are brutal. Oh, here's one from Winston Wolf. Is Bulgarian brandy good? I was in Zlati whatever Sands a couple years ago and forgot to try it. It was like 15 leva on the beach. What are all these words? So it might not be excellent. Have you tried Bulgarian brandy? I don't like brandy at all, so I don't really try it.
Not sure if I've had Bulgarian. I've had Rocky, which is Bulgarian. It's kind of brandy because it's like grappa. You know that?
I've heard of that. That's one of those it's a Greek thing, isn't it?
No, it's Italian. It's basically first they make wine, then whatever they're left with of grape juice from not making wine, they distill that out, and you get grappa. And it can be really good, and it can be really horrible. Yeah, he's right. That's plum brandy. Oh. That's not made from. Yeah, it's no. I've never had actual brandy. I've had plum brandy.
Fair enough. The only reason I ever had that in my minibar was for making dessert. I'd use it to impress the chicks. I'd make ice cream with flambéed like cherries on it and that. I just put some cherries in a pan, a little bit of sugar water, dump some brandy, light it on fire on the stove, give it a quick stir. It always impresses them, and then that's about as much cooking as I did once I had a girl over more than once or twice.
Yeah, I keep some brandy around, but I'm careful with it because it's the same thing with as with the red wine. I get a nasty ass headache from it.
Yeah, same.
Well, not from having like one, but if you have finish a bottle of it, you're going to be dead the next day.
Oh God, yeah. I don't even know what that headache is that they give you. I'm pretty sure it's some kind of tannin receptor thing in the back of my neck, but like I've gotten drunk off of Guinness. I've never gotten that. I've gotten drunk off of like a peaty ass scotch and never gotten that. It's just something about red wine in particular.
Yeah, and especially that mix if you have red wine and brandy.
Oh.
That combo right there, it's a migraine headache waiting to happen. So that's why I always stick with I keep Johnny Walker around the Black Label stuff for my drinking whiskey, and then I keep all my other whiskey sipping whiskey.
Dude, that's awesome. Actually, I agree. The Black Label was nice for that. It's something you can always. It's like Budweiser for Scotch. You can drink it all day and it's not a big deal.
I keep a Black Label and a Red Label because the Red Label is actually better if you're doing like a whiskey and Coke.
For mixing? Well, of course, yeah. Why would you even buy like mid-shelf whiskey if you're just going to mix it? At that point, I would just get Weiser's Deluxe or another Canadian rye.
Yeah, I don't drink Canadian whiskey. I have my first whiskey I ever bought was Canadian.
Mm-hmm. Which one did you get? Canadian Club?
No, Lord Calvert or something like that.
Lord Calvert, geez. You know that's a cuss word in French?
No, I have no clue.
Yeah, well, I used to have a boss that was named Calvert, and he's always said, "Call me Calvert," but he was French, so I'm like, "Why would you want me to do the T?" And he goes, "Because Calvert is like a cuss word in French." I'm like, all right, fair enough. I can't remember which one though. It wasn't gay, but it was like whatever. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, the point is, it was a cuss word. But yeah, that's Canadian rye. There's a reason you don't like it. It's because you know how Scotch, they have like strict standards. It has to be from Scotland. It has to have this much of this type of mash, and has to be aged this much in an oaken barrel that's been used before. American stuff has to be new oak, has to be corn, all those things.
Yeah.
Rye, Canadian rye, they don't have those same standards. So as long as you have rye in it, I don't even think they have like a limit to the percentage that you have to have for your rye mash. That you could basically call it Canadian rye. So it's just like there's no consistency from one brand to the other. Canadian Club will be heavy, heavy toffee smell tasting, or Crown Royal will make you want to fuck your cousin, and Weiser's Deluxe is not bad, but I mean, there's like you'll never find a connoisseur ever.
But what you're saying is you really don't want to mix Jack Daniels and Crown Royal because you'll want to fuck your sister and beat the shit out of your wife.
The only reason to buy Crown Royal is because they come and they have like a velvet bag that they give with the gift things, and you can put your Dungeons and Dragons dice inside the bag. Only reason.
Yeah, that reminds me. What was I saw a joke on someone like seeing that guy in a Speedo is like watching two squirrels trying to fight their way out of a Crown Royal bag.
Oh, I love shit. I'll never not shit on Canadian rye. I feel bad. Makes me a bad Canadian. I don't eat mac and cheese, and I don't like Canadian whiskey.
Okay, so Winston Wolf just asked us, what's a good mini bar inventory? White, red, rosé, vodka, brandy, whiskey, vermouth, beer, mixers, what else?
I just stick with the double duties. I keep it as simple as possible, and then you build on it as you need. Your tequila, vodka, gin, the cheapest whiskey you can find, rum, but a Bacardi rum, not like a dark rum.
Yeah, I would add like a light Bacardi, and I would probably also throw in like a bottle of some kind of cheap sparkling wine, like something like a Prosecco or Cava or Champagne or something, because a lot of girls like those.
I guess. Do those have a decent shelf life? Or like, how long do you keep them in there? Well, I guess you should be using it, but.
Well, I go through them fairly quickly, but you could probably have them in there for a while. Yeah, Angostura bitters is a good one, John T. If you want to do old fashions.
Definitely have bitters. I like having bitters and sugar cubes available. The limes and lemons, I kind of have those in the fridge anyway, so I kind of like having those around. And then for like accessory stuff, I don't know if it's really like just having mix. I love those. If you can ever find them, little airport-sized bottles of like your tonic, your club sodas, and that.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have, but I don't know. It's I like having some EC mixers, like it keeps some Coke on hand, a little bit of tonic water, and some club soda. Make sure you have enough ice.
Oh yeah, always have ice. I always have like 10 ice cube trays in my fridge for that. I even still have that.
And I also like having the idea of having like buy a bar set. You can get them where you have like mixing spoons. You have your shaker, and you have the little measuring thing, so you can measure out the shots accurately.
Oh, a jigger?
Yeah, a jigger.
Want to be very clear, that's with a J.
Yeah, I had that talk with someone because someone's like, you have like the N-bomb card with me, right? And I was told him like, I know, but I'm not going to start using that word in my vocabulary because that's just not the word you want slipping out in the wrong context because you're used to using it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my kid's mad at me. I call my dog that all the time. But she's like, yeah, if you ever say that outside this house, I'm going to kill you. So I've kind of had to stop.
Yeah, that's one. And I also like to avoid, like, I had to retrain myself not to have, the old 90s curse words in my vocabulary, like retard and, a few of the other ones. Like, I had to stop using motherfucker because for some reason saying fuck or saying shit is completely acceptable in most corporate contexts as long as you don't overuse them.
Right.
But once you cross that motherfucker line, there's a line there. You cross where you go into the unacceptable curse words.
I don't think I had that. Oh, I guess, no, I can see that. I know for mine, when I came in first day, although I get a big pass, I just say I'm ex-Navy, and for some reason, people give me a wide berth on the cussing I can do, even though I do my best not to. Maybe that's the trick. You just got to give them some palpable reason why you should be swearing. Oh, I was from a logging camp before this. Oh, yeah, it's just the way he is.
Yeah, well, it's I tend to call it environmental damage. It's when you're damaged because you've been in an environment for a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with if you're like, I'm extremely direct. So I just, well, I'm used to working with engineers and technicians.
Oh, yeah, so you'll probably have the same thing.
Yeah.
I always like those guys more. I hate the business side for the I guess they call it acumen, business acumen. I've just never liked it.
Well, I quite enjoy that side. It's just one of those cases where you want to. The business side is enjoyable as long as you don't get too caught up with the marketing side of things. I think that's why I hate the Twitter marketers, because they're like what happens if you take like the basic bitch 21-year-old girl who just got her first marketing gig as a social media marketing manager for some major corporation, and she just goes nuts.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. Still laugh. That's why I make sure to add dynamic to everything if I want to sound all marketing.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Wendy's. They have the girl is their social media manager is fucking brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the one that does their Twitter feed that just basically rips into people like Don Wrinkles?
Yeah.
No, I like that one. That one was good. The last Blockbuster was another one I kind of liked on that same route, but he's kind of more existential. It's too bad Hollywood doesn't start doing that instead of just trashing on white men and then getting you to come into the office. I never quite could figure that stuff out.
Well, I kind of like the because I view everything as being kind of on a continuum and going in cycles. So right now they're ripping on white men, and that's going to have some blowback because our entire time now is basically an overcorrection from Nazi Germany.
Which is weird. Although I got a theory on that. My one theory is if the Irish controlled the media, we'd probably be talking about the potato famine right now, but I'll just leave that one there. I don't want to get too far into that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to find any final solutions to that one, right?
That, and I think the fact that every kid who stayed up till 3 a.m. saw nothing but World War II TV shows on the History Channel. I think now that we're growing up, that we've been told for 20 years that that's been the biggest boogeyman. I think that's part of it too.
Well, it was sort of like what happened was you had this big rush back in like the early 1900s where everything was based off Darwin. So they wanted everything to be biologically rooted and empirical.
Oh yeah, the phrenology days.
Went way too far with the eugenics and everything there. So, and then suddenly they overcorrected after Nazi Germany because that was kind of, let's call it a rather extreme implementation of the Darwinian principles.
That's very generous of you. Very generous.
So what happened was you got the overcorrection with the blank slate, and then it has nothing to do with genetics. It's all just social learning. But even the military recognizes that that's wrong because even the U.S. Army has like a cutoff where like if your IQ is under 85, you cannot join the Army.
Mm-hmm.
Just on the basis that there's nothing you can do in the Army if you have an IQ. You actually do more damage than you do good.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why their aptitude tests, at least the Canadian Forces ones, are used as your entrance exam for Mensa if you wanted to join. Funnily enough.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But the reason they do it is just like you have to have a certain IQ to learn anything. And I think if you have an IQ over, I think it's 125 or something, you can learn anything. Your IQ doesn't limit you in that regard, but still, you see guys who are into guys who do research in physics have an average IQ, I think, around 140.
Yeah. And I've heard that's when you get into that other problem where you're so far removed from an average IQ that you really have a hard time relating to that mindset, which is why they say that 110 to 130 is the butter zone.
Yeah, Aaron Clary did a great book on that called The Curse of the High IQ. So
dude, I like that book.
It's just that let's say if you have an average IQ 100 and you talk with someone who's 30 points below you in IQ 70, they're functionally retarded.
That's in a clinical sense, YouTube.
Yes, it's clinical. And then if you have an IQ of 130 and you talk to someone with an IQ 100, that's the same thing as a person with 100 talking to the person that's retarded.
Right.
So, and I think that's why they say that the best managers have an IQ of between 115 and 125, because they can understand what the real high IQs are seeing, thinking, and saying. And they can translate that into the average IQ on the line.
Mm-hmm. I can see that. I remember my boss did that to me. He said, "Look, I know you're smarter than me with all your fancy degrees and that stuff, but I'm your boss, so get in there and scrub that toilet." Wasn't smarter than me, but he did establish that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's funny. Do we have any other topics on here? Because I know we want to do logistics and we want to do married guy versus single guy with making excuses.
Habitual line steppers was the third one on there, but I think we kind of peppered that in with the rest of this stuff with guys who are stepping over outside of bounds and that.
Yeah,
and I have a feeling that's going to turn really quickly into just ranting about how much we hate dudes who do this, like a Seinfeld episode.
No, that wasn't my intention with it. Was just because it was founded in tension. Because the whole thing, well, a lot of guys don't get is you have to build tension with the girl.
Mm-hmm.
Like
a little bit of anxiety.
Where, touch your hand real quick and then you take your hand away again. That's building tension because you touched her and she wants you to touch her more, but you're holding back on it. Yeah. Or you see something that just to get a reaction from her.
Yeah.
It's not to piss her off, but you're saying something that puts her in that uncomfortable position. Yes, it's funny, but I shouldn't really be laughing at this. Because if you get her to be a little naughty when it comes to, the jokes, the humor, the interaction, it's easier to get her to be a little naughty on other sides as well.
Well, yeah, you set the standard.
Because if you're a consistent rule follower and that's the picture, she's going to follow her rules too.
And you can't walk in dressed like the best Jehovah's Witness ever and then all of a sudden start talking nasty. She's not going to fall for that. Although if you come in like the thug drug dealer and that's from the get-go, you basically set a baseline of behavior that she doesn't need to deviate from.
It's the same thing with your cursing thing. Like when you say you're ex-Navy, everyone expects you to curse like a sailor.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to, pepper in some sex toy stories too in the first date area.
Ooh, I like that one.
Like when, the time when, you had a roll of bondage tape in your toolbox with you at work or something, or, something like that, because that tells her something about you and your behavior. Oh, Carl's IQ is so high, it's almost certain he's a quantum AI. No, I'm not.
I was going to say, these ones here, I can never tell if they're compliments or not. It almost sounds like he's kind of jabbing at you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, no, I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just like, I can never tell these ones that are they compliments? Are they backhanded compliments or what?
Well, it was still nicer than the other guy who gave you the tip for how to describe our show.
Oh, fuck, which one was that one? I've heard quite a few.
Say his name on air. This was the one you sent me the other day.
Yeah, that guy. Dude, I'm still confused by that one. I know I'm not supposed to go into other people's frames, but I've been thinking about that one for days, and I still don't know what the hell he was trying to say. I really don't.
No, me neither. And it's I don't really get what like some guys. I think they're trying to learn how to banter, and they just go way into the let's call it non-calibrated territory. It's like the guys try to do like the first neg the guy throws out. It's always going to make the girl either cry or throw a drink in his face.
Yeah, I can see. Actually, yeah, that makes sense when you mention it there. I can see that.
It's like I'm trying kind of banter that Carl and Rian does on air, but I kind of realize that the whole point of the banter is to hit on something that the other guy thinks is funny or is an acute observation. It's not to insult someone.
I think that's good. Like how we talk then, because that's obviously a line step. You're stepping over somebody's comfort zone there, and not in a good way. I do find value in, I always talk about improv classes. I think you talked about open mic nights, doing stand-up is like a good way to get out of that and kind of calibrate your banter for an audience so they can understand it. Just trying to think of what other things people can do to learn how not to overstep social boundaries.
Well, first off, don't be a moron. It's like if you're going
If it was that easy to tell them to stop being a moron, it would have been solved already. We know that.
well, think of it like when you use a whip, like a real Indiana Jones style whip. When you swing back forward and then you flip it back.
Yeah.
Think about that same motion. It's when I take a shot at one of your shirts, it's an insult, but it's done in a humorous way. You know, I don't mean anything by it.
Yeah. Well, it's a comfort thing. It shows you're comfortable enough around me that you're willing to challenge me and know that we're not going to fight. I had to explain this to a client before too, where it was kind of like he didn't understand what value was in interaction and why guys would challenge each other and not like be a threatening thing. And I'm like, it was a hard thing to explain, actually. I'm hoping you got a good one on there.
Well, it's kind of like if you think about the difference between sexual harassment and flirting is whether the girl thinks you're attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between banter and bullying is whether the other party is enjoying it as well.
It's a good way to put it.
And I think it's the same thing with value in an interaction. You don't challenge a guy, like, how do I put this? You don't challenge a guy to push him down. You challenge a guy to allow him to elevate himself by showing that he gets the game.
Ooh, I like that one then. It's giving a guy an opportunity to show he gets subtext.
Because everyone remembers that one kid that was bullied in school.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone really liked the guy, but it was just he never ever got the fact he was supposed to A, accept the insult with humor, B, throw an insult back.
Oh, I know. Yeah, those guys. The one where it's like you call him an idiot, and he goes, "Yeah, I know I'm an idiot, totally." And he kind of laughs with it, and you're like, it was kind of off-putting. Like I actually got bothered when people did that, and I would just kind of leave them alone after a while.
Yeah,
and I get they're doing it as a defense mechanism, but it's always, yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at with it. It's you have to show. It's same thing with girls. Like if you what was it? Jack Murphy did like a long rant thread on consent that I retweeted and then took back down because then he went off the deep end from my perspective about halfway in.
Ooh, which one was that one?
I don't remember the actual thread, but he had a good thing, and he actually, the easiest way, one of the better ways he's gotten verbal express consent is just asking a girl, "Are you ready for me to fuck you? Or are you ready to get fucked?" And if the girl goes yes, there's your explicit verbal consent.
Right.
And but saying that versus saying, "Are you ready to have sex, or do you want to have sex with me now?" Those two are different.
Oh yeah, it's missing that bite. It has to have a little bit of nastiness to it.
Because I actually tried that on some dates when the girls started yammering on Twitter about expressed verbal consent, and I've never asked, I just do.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually did that on like 4 or 5 dates. I did more, but the first 5, I think I asked something like, "Do you want me to kiss you now?" That's an old mystery tactic. And the second one was, what was that again? Was just saying, "I really want to kiss you now. Is that okay?" And most of the girls, the funniest thing was the most common response.
Yeah.
Was yes, but it's weird now that you asked.
I was gonna say, because it kind of sounds weird the way you say it, even. Yeah.
I just use the face touching / hair adjusting technique to see if a girl is ready to be kissed. Because if she lets you push her hair behind her ear or something, she's not going to block the kiss.
Well, I like the one where I can't remember if it was where I got it from, where you go in and you stop just short, like a couple centimeters away, then pause for a minute there to give a girl a chance to veto out of it. And then usually, I mean, they almost never have, at least in my experience. But I like that too, because let's face it, body language is most of the communication anyway. So when people are talking about explicit verbal consent, that just has too much of an autism vibe for me. I would much rather have the body language speak for it.
Well, I think the reason why they're doing it, and this is where, like, I occasionally, like, I think Rolo can sometimes extrapolate a little bit too far with things, but then again, we see them doing exactly what he said so often that I'm starting to think maybe I'm off on calibration. But the thing is, they want express verbal consent and ideally a written consent in triplicate with signed, sealed, delivered when they're dealing with a beta guy who they don't really want to fuck, but it's having, let's say, a pragmatic exchange of services rather than validation.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, girls have sex for two main reasons, and one is that they want the validation of the hot guy wants me, and they really want to have sex with him. And number two is to get stuff. And I'm not sure if you go to like this logic here, but like when a wife has sex with her husband, she doesn't necessarily have to want to have sex with her husband every time she does it because it's expected of her, it's part of the deal, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she likes making him happy even if she's not into it. There's a whole lot of things like there.
Yeah, so it's at that point, they're in like, oh, you need express verbal consent for that because that's going to be such a pain in the ass. And most guys are never, if they're scared to ask her out, they're also going to be scared to ask her to fuck them.
Much.
So
that's why, yeah, like your buddy was saying, how you pretty much had to wait for the girl to essentially grab his dick, give it the secret handshake, and then finally he realizes, I think maybe she's into me.
Not essentially, she literally grabbed his dick on the dance floor.
Oh man, I missed that.
And even then, he was kind of like, do you think she's into me? And it's like, what does she have to fucking do?
No, man, she's trying to steal your wallet. She's just got really bad aim. Yeah, I'll never get that. That fear of failure part, it's so strange because you get a guy to walk it through and they can never articulate what consequence they're worried about. It's always just a fear feeling, and then they just lead with that. And it's such like a feminine way of interacting with the world.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to a lot of guys, like, the reason why a lot of guys are drawn to things like engineering is because it's exact, it's very explicit, and it's very easy. And dealing with women isn't. Like, imagine how easy it would be if you were gay. Like, be out at the bar one night having a beer, you turn to the guy next to you who's almost done with his beer, want some dick? Sure. You? Sure. Okay, you go home and you fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no game there. Like, if you were gay, you wouldn't need game.
Oh God, no. They tried making a subreddit for that, like a gay version of Red Pill where people could talk game, but it just never took off because, like, what are you gonna do? It's like a girl pickup forum. Why would you even need that?
Don't get fat. That's the what was it? Donovan's self-improvement book for women. Buy a treadmill or something.
Oh yeah. Don't be fat. Shut up. Yeah, I noticed the GoBots of AJ's little 12 ways to be a beautiful woman thing kind of took off. Everybody had their own little takes on it. Well, it's not the same unless you're 6'2" and look like Jesus.
No, but that's kind of where that's one of the things with AJ is that I think he's always kind of been like that. And same with Elliot Hulse.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're guys who are always kind of at the top of the heap anyway. Like, AJ would have to make an effort not to be in the top 10% of dudes.
Oh, yeah.
So, it would be interesting actually to do an experiment with a guy like AJ. Just tie him to a chair and force feed him Dominoes for 3 months until he got fat as fuck. And then see what happens.
Well, that's the married thing. I called it, there was the two types of guys, and then everybody's always thinking you could just alpha your way out of thing. But there was a few guys, a couple of them were even like fans of mine in the chat there, where like they'd hit an accident or something, and so they'd gain a bunch of weight because they're on pain medication and a couple surgeries and that, and then they actually find it. And it's funny because they hit the ground harder, but they bounce back faster because they know what the other side is like. Then they hit harder because they don't have any of those coping skills, like you were saying on your other tweet, how you had to make every mistake you could make, and that's why you're good now. But when you felon and then you don't have that, they tend to get a little angrier. And then typical guys too, when we're at our worst, we tend to be our most unattractive, so it makes people least inclined to help us. So it's definitely, I wouldn't want to do that to him because I think that would be a hard thing for him. It'd be like the guy equivalent of the wall.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to do it to him either. It's kind of mean. But the reason why I said it is I think a lot of guys would, because when you're advising guys who are in a completely different state, that's why like you had the who was that? It was a male fitness model / coach.
Oh, I know the one. Yeah, who gained a bunch of weight to lose it.
Just to kind of get where his clients are coming from. And I think that's why I say, well, you know, a guy who says, you know, just be yourself, that is a guy who is naturally embodies all those qualities that make women wet.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't necessarily know what he does. He just knows that he does whatever falls in and it's still right. It's like having the guy, like one of my math teachers had like a genius level IQ, like 160 plus.
Yeah.
And he was just very, very good with math. But he was the worst fucking teacher I've ever had in math. Just because it came so easy to him. And it's like you come into the class and he had like this huge formula written up on the blackboard. It's like, if you don't understand this, you have nothing to do in this class. You could just get the fuck out now.
Yeah, it sounds like a 160. But I was going to say it was more like you've heard the pigeon experiment? Or have I talked to you about this before?
Yeah,
or do you know what I'm talking about?
Well,
it was pigeons would have like a food pellet. If they'd hit a button, a food pellet would come out. And they tried 2 experiments. One where the button was attached to it. So when they're hungry, they hit the button, the food comes out. The other one where the button wasn't attached to the thing. So whether they hit it or not was irrelevant. It would just come out at random times. And so what the pigeons would do is they started to dance, and they built up all these elaborate dances when they'd hit the button because they thought that was what got them the pellet. And that's the kind of my worry about taking dating advice from guys that are too hot, is that they build up all their elaborate dances that have nothing to do with it. In reality, they just happen to be there when the pellet was coming out of the thing. So I always call them pigeon dancing.
That's a great observation, and I think you're right on that. I think it's very hard for guys who are those guys naturally. Jeez, 1 second, phone's going.
Yeah, no worries. We should probably be closing it up pretty soon. Anyway, Redman Group's starting in about half an hour, and I think you've missed your breakfast so far. All right, well, I guess we'll do some last minute questions here. We're going to close off. Give us half an hour of a break in between. I need to have another coffee anyway. I'll do a quick read of the chats. Verbal consent comes up with the subject. They'll say, do what they do. Yeah. Actually, yeah, this is pretty good. You guys are, a lot of the time, the way we're talking about stuff, and it's just kind of flowing for us, so I kind of forget what we're talking about halfway through it.
So why if we have 61 guys in the chat. Why don't you guys ask questions and we'll answer?
Yeah. I guess, yeah, we'll do like another 10 minutes. That gets us 20 minutes before the Redman Group starts, so everybody can grab a break and get some breakfast.
I can finally finish my fucking sandwich.
Bless you too, Winston. Pigeon dance is the source of all superstitions.
The superstition thing, it's the same thing with the football teams. Like, none of the guys wash their jock when they're in a championship because they think that'll make them win. And if one guy washes his jock, that's bad luck and it's his fault.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just comes down to the fact that if you don't do you know how to take down coffee's acidity when doing intermittent fasting?
Darker roasts.
Darker roasts work, maybe. And you can also, I think, not using espresso-style beans.
Oh, I can see that making a difference. But yeah, I like darker roasts. And if you've got like a cheaper coffee that tastes really bad with the acidity, try a pinch of salt. It won't make bad coffee good, but it'll make horrible coffee palpable. But that's the only 2 things I could think of. Although I guess if it's too much acid, you just add a base to it. I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but if you added like a pinch of baking soda to that, do you think that would help with that? Or do you think that would just basically make you sick?
I have no clue. Toronto did time dilation last night. Took the girl home and banged her, so that's good on you.
Awesome. Dude, that actually is the greatest comment I think I've seen on my entire channel since I started it up. Taking the stuff we talk about, using it, and getting some success from it. Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Well, that's the difference between us and Upstream.
But they're so close, man. Their magnum opus. It's just got to be perfect. It's not there yet. 2 more years.
How old I am? Well, I'm a little younger than Ryan.
Yeah.
And bowling. I'm not a huge fan of bowling.
I used to be until my mom beat me. Beat me on a game. She just fucking smack talked me. She did the equivalent of teabagging me in real life. Like video game teabagging, not real life teabagging.
Oh, what kind of excuses we used to bring girls to our place? Well, we used some of them, but you always have the one. If you need one, just make something up. Just have something in your apartment that it's natural to talk about on the date that you can say, well, I have that in my apartment. Why don't you come home and see it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So a specific one on this too. So every time I visited a country, I would pick up a mask from that country. So I have like a collection of 20 some masks, one for every country I've been to. And so a lot of the time, like travel will get into it because girls love talking about travel and that, like, oh, come check out the masks. But that's the thing. Yeah, if you got an interesting life, everything that you have on your walls and in your house should have a story attached to it. So, I mean, it should be coming naturally. And then Mark's got one. Any suggestions for post-gym meals? Yeah, the same meals you were eating anyway. I don't buy into that whole supplementing thing where you have to have maltodextrin and a certain thing and the feeding windows. I just keep the diet consistent. If the timing of my food is the one weak spot I have in my workouts, then, I mean, I'll consider that a win.
Well, I do intermittent fasting. So normally I fast like 18, 20 hours a day, and then I eat whatever I want the rest of the time. I just keep an eye on protein.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm on a fast right now. I guess I'm 10 hours in. No.
But
12 hours.
Cut it because I can't start 16. Drinking on an empty stomach. And I always have usually I'll have a beer or two while doing this in the Red Man group, but today I decided I want to make Bloody Marys the official drink since this is a morning show and we're doing it Saturday morning and I'm usually hungover as fuck. It's nice to have a Bloody Mary when you start the day. There's something about that combination of tomato juice and salts and everything.
Yeah. Dude, I tell you what, next week I'll get on that too. I'll be doing Caesars just because it's Canadian.
And then I'm probably going to have beer on the Red Man group, but I can't get too sloppy because, like I told you, I kind of fucked up my scheduling because I had one girl planned and I figured she would flake, so I booked in another one, and then the girl didn't flake, so I have 2 dates set up tonight, so can't be too sloppy. It's nice to have a little bit of a buzz going, but you don't want to be like raving sloppy drunk.
Oh, God, yeah. Drink 1, sip 2, hold 3. Ooh, Filbert's got a good one. Can I show her my dirty dorms room? The fuck do you think? Yeah, I'm a slob. Come on in.
But I would advise, some level of cleanliness. It's like I said, you don't want it to be like the condom machine in a public restroom where you're more likely to get a Pepsi off the condom machine than the girl you're planning on fucking.
Yeah. Oh, Phil, I hope that was a joke question, man. Clean your damn room. It takes if you're in a dorm room, how long is it really going to take to clean a 10 by 10 space? Just pick up all your hoodies, throw them in a hamper, call it a day.
Oh, look at you becoming all Jordan Peterson.
Clean your dorm. Wash your dick. Then who do you got? Low cirrhosis. Isn't stomach acid already more acid than coffee? Coffee would just dilute it, lower pH.
Nick has what's a good resource for indirect day game? Well, Day Bang is a great book. I really enjoyed that. I also like Krauser's material. His books are kind of pricey, though, on that side, and you don't really want to pirate his shit because I actually like supporting guys who make good content that I actually get some use from. I'm not sure if Roosh has updated. I know he updated Bang, I think Day Bang, since he became an imam now. So I'm not really sure if it's just prayer calls now or what the hell is going on now.
The best day game is during one of those 5 calls to Mecca. Yeah, come on, lie down on this mat with me. And you already got her on a blanket. After about 30 seconds of praying, you're in there.
Yeah, and if she's praying, she's already on all fours.
A 0.5 milligram of Valium helps. Are you talking about stomach acid? Dude, ew.
Jesus.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the pill stuff, I am not a fan of any of the I guess, daily functional pill sets like Valium, Xanax, Ativan, all the SSRIs. I cannot stand them. I don't find them. As far as I'll go is probably, and I think Illimitable Man and I were agreeing on this, like the race tams, if you really have to like buckle down and get some study done and you're having a hard time focusing. But that's as far as I'd take that for anything.
Yeah, I don't get into any of those. I do have my supplement regime, but none of those are pills in the traditional sense.
Oh yeah.
I do take painkillers on occasion, but I try to keep that to a minimum as well.
No, I'm with you. Especially ibuprofen. Well, that's the thing, because I know ibuprofen is supposed to be for anti-inflammation, but the problem is during a workout, you need that inflammation because that's I can't remember the exact function for it, but it actually is what helps stimulate the hormonal changes that create growth. So you're actually kind of holding back your gains by taking ibuprofen.
How can I make small talk with girls interesting? You can.
Yeah, you can't. But I always die inside because it bores me so much. Actually, you know what? And Gay Lube Oil had a great post on this when he called it cynical implementation. Because what the deal is here, Los Aros, is that your inflated sense of self thinks it's too good for other people. Which, I mean, I can't fault a guy for having inflated sense of self. So what you really need to do is just treat it like it's a cynical thing, almost like you're being a satirical in your small talk. And what's going to happen is as you start doing that, you're going to be the best basic bitch that ever basicked. But then after a while, you're going to kind of start to understand the nuance of why like random banter small talk is useful, in my opinion. You're going to start catching on that you're just using conversation as your signal, as like your baseline signal wave. And then the body language is what makes the conversation. And then if you can't find joy in having a good body language subtext conversation with somebody while talking about the weather, at that point, I got nothing for you. Maybe Turd Flinging Monkeys channel at that point.
Plus, well, from my stance, I don't really small talk with girls. I go straight into kind of storyteller mode, making jokes, playful banter, that type of thing. I just never small talk.
But I always consider that to be small talk. As opposed to, because anything that's not small talk is essentially technical discussions. Like, oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? Like the where's, the what's, and the how's.
Different definitions then.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I think we're just hit 90 minutes. So you want to go another 9, or should we take a break before the red man?
No, I think we should take a break. All right, guys, thanks for showing up. We're gonna grab a quick break. I'm gonna get another coffee, and we'll see you in 20 minutes on the Red Man group. Take care.